I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, this is Christina Baier, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Baier, and today we're going to be talking about Kamala Harris bombing on Fox News. And that's all. That'll take enough time. That'll be our show of the day, watching her interview and talking about the tactics that she tried to use that failed, and why she did such a terrible job. Now, there's people on the left who say that she did a good job. She's getting kudos for just showing up, and I appreciate her showing up and finally giving someone the opportunity to ask her tough questions. But this should not have. We're 19 days out. It shouldn't have taken like 20 days to have an interview like this. I think that's the number, but it shouldn't have taken this long. It shouldn't have taken like 40 days for them to have an interview where she sat down and was questioned by anybody. And that was Dana Bash. And that was 40 days in. And that was an interview with Tim Walz. So she really waited too long to really be questioned at all. And now I'm assuming they got some bad news and some polling. They're not where they want to be. There's some bad internals. The betting markets are shifting toward Trump. People kind of feel that energy. The joy that she had is waning or has waned. She has a big issue with men. People are resenting the fact, like Obama and other people are resenting the fact that Black men aren't coming out and supporting her like they need to. Even her gap between women and Trump isn't where it needs to be, especially to make up for the numbers where she's struggling in other places. You have union members who were fine with Joe, like Joe, they don't like her. She's just not vibing with people. So she had to do some kind of shift. And so this is a Hail Mary, I think. And, she's aggressive in this interview. And I think some people are responding to the aggression that she had. And they're like, yes, queen, like, ooh, she's strong. She stands up to bullies as if Bret Baier is a bully. But you have to look at the substance of what she's actually saying. And it's not there. It's not there. So I want to break down her attitude, sure, but what she's actually saying, okay? And why she said it the way that she said it, and why people should not give her a pass and understand that this is a terrible job that she did. And it's so terrible that the Trump campaign again said our latest ad just dropped, and they just dropped the whole interview because they want people to see the full interview in its entirety, not just little snippets that she's going to post on Kamala HQ to be like, oh, Kamala said this, like, no, they want everybody to see everything in context because it makes her look bad. And campaigns, this is what they normally do on social media. They just take the tiniest snippets without a lot of context or without any context, so you can pass around a sound bite. That's what these campaign accounts do. The fact that they can just play the whole thing and present to you a hot mess and be confident about that says a lot about the job that she did. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost to stream and run my site, all that good stuff. So you guys can support. I very much do appreciate for watching on Facebook. You guys can send stars. For watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. For watching later, you guys can send stuff there as well. Via like stickers and stuff if you're not watching live. I thank you to all of you who watch live, and I thank you to those who watch the show back later. I'm just checking to make sure that I'm live in other places. I am. Okay, so I believe that me playing this video on, I've never had an issue, I think, streaming some stuff that's been on Fox News before. Sometimes on ABC they like stop the stream, and they don't stop they kind of stop the live, I guess. Like I'm still going forth live, but the stream is kind of interrupted, and when I stop streaming the thing, then they will allow people back on. So if that does happen, I just want you to know, I guess we'll have to come back and watch it later. I'll try to. I think I'll have enough breaks or whatever that won't happen anyway. I don't know how other streamers are able to just watch everything, you know, and kind of live react it the way that they do. But I know ABC is really bad, especially when we play like clips from The View. So I try to limit that, but I don't think I've ever had an issue with Fox. So I just want to put that warning out there in case that's kind of interrupted. But I do also want to encourage you guys to check out different merch at the store, like black tea mug and other t-shirts that we have available. Check out some of the hoodies, because hoodies are comfortable. And I put on this goat hoodie the other day because I'm like, I was really cold. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really comfortable and really warm. So I have the goat hoodies. I do have them in different colors, and I do have them in t-shirts and stuff. And I got other stuff, like I voted for President Trump and all I got was historic peace deals and no new wars and a tax cut and gas under $2, which it's funny because I was on a live the other day and someone was like trying to pretend that gas wasn't that low under Trump and that it was about the same thing that it was now. And people in the comments were like, no, gas was like 180 something. Like I remember gas being under $2. And but people rewrite history. It wasn't that long ago. So that's what's really concerning, because it wasn't that long ago. But people see what they want to see, I guess. You guys can also check out different books that I've written. I have 18 altogether. I won't give you a rundown, but there's 2 nonfiction and the rest are fiction. So go ahead and check it out. There's a link if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, there's a link that'll take you to my Amazon page that'll have all these books laid out so you guys can learn more, or you can go to ninjadustpublishing.com to read some of the summaries. But if you go to the merchandise page on blacktnews.com, there's a banner at the top that'll take you to my book website where you can learn more. Okay, I don't want to delay anymore. I want to get to the meat of everything. That's why you guys are here. Now, I've already watched the whole thing already. I saw a lot of snippets last night. Actually, I watched about half of it last night live because someone was playing on TikTok. And then I went back and watched some clips and started commentating on some clips. And I watched the whole thing this morning, and it's awful. So hopefully if you have watched it, it'll be pretty entertaining watching it with me. So without further delay, here we go.
Madam Vice President, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Bret.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration, because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you
now,
just a number? Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Bret, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of
system
6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when
okay, so people are like, they could even sit down for a couple minutes before he started interrupting her. Okay, he asked her a very direct question, and I understand why she doesn't want to answer it. I totally get that. But he asked her a very direct question, and she's like, well, first of all, and starts filibustering. If you've seen other Kamala Harris interviews, she will filibuster. She'll go on and on and on. She'll make up some kind of prologue and maybe won't even answer your question. Like, hey, what are you going to do about the economy? What are you going to do to help Black men? What are you going to do about this? And she's like, okay, I'm a child of the middle class, And she starts going on, and she starts talking about where she used to live, and she starts talking about this other woman who nobody knows, who was like a second mom to her. And she goes on and she goes on and goes on, and you might be 4 minutes in before she starts saying, I want to create an opportunity economy. And it's just too much. It's too much. He has a show at 6 o'clock. They're trying to do the interview where they record it all at once and then just like play it live with no like editing or interpreting or whatever. So they were supposed to start it at 5, and she didn't waltz in there until like 5:17. So they're already behind. He's trying to get his stuff out, and she's trying to filibuster. So he just wants the answer, and then she's like, well, let's cut to the chase. Does she answer his question? No. She starts trying to do all this flowery stuff about, oh, like this is a long, systemic kind of problem or whatever, to try to draw attention away from her and Joe Biden, and put it on Trump and other administrations to just be like, everybody's failed. Everybody's failed. You can't point the finger at me because everybody's done a bad job. But he asked her a very direct question. So he said the number. So now he's trying to get to his actual point. So that's where we are already in the interview. And they will talk over each other, but other people would just kind of relent at one point. She does this thing where she'll get aggressive, expecting you to back down. I've seen her do with Charlemagne. Charlemagne asked some questions, not recently, but about the administration and some things that Democrats weren't doing and the Biden-Harris administration said they would do, but they haven't done. And he was, like, why haven't you guys done this? And she gets a little attitude, and she's like, you're sounding like Republican, Charlemagne. And gets a little upset. And then he just kind of backs down. He's like, yeah, that's a fire. That's a fire we all like, and we want to see, Vice VP. And they just back down. So that's what she's hoping for. And I don't know what she thought they were going to get out of Bret. And I do want to say before we continue on, because some people are saying that Bret is biased and all this stuff. And some people have said these people would never treat Donald Trump that way. First of all, reporters have treated Donald Trump horribly many times, and unprofessionally many times. So they asked tough questions of him, but Bret Baier has asked tough questions of Donald Trump. If you go back to the primary, there's a particular video, and I shared it on TikTok last night, of him just saying, hey, you said you'd hire all the best people. Here's a list of all these people that you hired. Here's all the terrible things that you said about them, and now they're not supporting you. So what do you have to say about that? And how he just laid it all out with like a laundry list of things Trump said and, things people have said about him. It didn't make Trump look great. Now, there were some things people probably laughed at some of the names he called those people, but it was one of the roughest interviews I thought that Trump had during that primary season, So Bret tried. Bret did his job. So I don't want people to be unfair to Bret. I don't want people to be unfair to Bret. He will ask tough questions of any candidate. This isn't just him trying to nail Kamala Harris to a wall, because these questions aren't actually hard. They're inconvenient for her to answer, but they're not hard questions to answer. Okay. So let's keep going.
When you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called
And-
the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the. Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish.
you had the
please.
White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and
in
they
the
didn't
middle
bring up
of
that bill.
responding to the point you're raising,
Okay.
and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States.
Okay, now she's going into things that happened this year, as opposed to the question was like, you guys got in at first, and she's saying from the beginning, before we did anything else, we did this particular bill that was going to address the border or address the crisis, and Bret didn't let her go on and just throw false information out there, because she's done this before. So really the issue is that Kamala Harris thinks everyone who would possibly support her is stupid and she doesn't have any respect for you, because he's saying, hey, there's all this problem with illegal immigration and there's been some dangerous people who came across the border, etc., blah blah blah. And she's like, from day one, we put out this thing. It was a priority. Your priority was an amnesty bill, ma'am. So what you wanted to do on day one, which, by the way, they got rid of Remain in Mexico. They should have kept that. They halted deportations and did other things to reverse Trump's hard border policies. They wanted to stop construction on the wall, all this stuff. By the way, she didn't want to fund it, didn't want to fund ICE. She said a bunch of crazy stuff, 2019, 2020. So she's saying, well, my solution was to reward all this bad behavior and just make people citizens, give a pathway to citizenship. The problem with that is when you reward that bad behavior and your border is definitely not secure, more people believe that they can come over and they'll be rewarded for their bad behavior. So they just breed more bad behavior. And she thinks, no one will look up the thing that she's talking about? She didn't expect Bret to say, hey, yeah, that was an amnesty bill, ma'am. Here's the name of the bill. So what was he supposed to do? Just be silent for, a couple minutes while she continues to filibuster? And now she's talking about stuff that they tried to push this year. The bill that Trump killed or whatever is what they'll say. Baier and Donalds is like HR 2. That there was a bill that Republicans tried to pass for border security, but and all that other stuff, and they got it passed in the House, but it's way more strict than the Senate Democrats would like. So Chuck Schumer did not advance that forward. So anytime someone brings up the fact that, the Republicans, they don't want to push this bipartisan bill in the Senate. Okay, well, the House already passed a bill. It didn't pass the Senate. So there's something on the table that Democrats will not play ball with, and that Biden would not sign, and that she would not sign. So there's that. It's just amazing the games that she's playing with people. Again, she does not respect the voters.
It's Congress to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done
Yes, ma'am.
as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And
six
Donald Trump,
Democrats-
but let me just finish.
Six
and
Democrats
Donald
voted
Trump
against that bill.
learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue.
I hear you.
But
She's
actually
literally
is
playing
focused on
games.
fixing
Six
it.
Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the six Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Nungary, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families
I think
an apology?
let me just say, first of all,
How about we're like, okay, 13 minutes in, and he asked a lead up question leading into this is the real question he really wanted to ask. And we're 13 minutes in, and she threw all this garbage in the front to kind of lead away from this. And he's bringing receipts. So imagine if he had not cut her off and said some other stuff, we'd still be hearing about how about I don't know, how she's a middle class child or something like that. He's trying to cut through the filibustering, and we're already again like 13 minutes in this interview to get to his real point about this.
those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Brett.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I'm so sorry for her loss. Sincerely. But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about
So this is the issue here with Kamala Harris, and there's obviously a lot of bad things that have happened, and she has. A lot of people are like, oh, talking about this interview and the policies that have been implemented, and you can say, well, Joe Biden was the president; he's the one who signed the executive order. She doesn't have that kind of power, just because even if she was a border czar, she didn't have that kind of power. He's the president. And he's the one who did these policy stuff day one. Okay, but it is a Biden-Harris administration, and you always have to keep the context in mind. You always have to keep this context in mind that she was asked, and Brett's going to bring this up. She was already asked the question, is there anything that you would have done differently? And she said, nothing comes to mind. So if nothing comes to mind that you would change and do differently, and you have the beautiful gift of hindsight, and it takes nothing to say, you know what, and we believe that the issue could have been tampered down with looking at root causes, and in retrospect, there were some things about our predecessor that were good policies, and that's why I'm going to work across the aisle with people and make sure that we all come together for solutions. Donald Trump isn't interested in solutions. That's what she could keep going on that. He's interested. He's more interested in obtaining power, and that's why he killed the border deal. Which that's her talking point. I'm just trying to give a good kind of answer from her perspective. But we will going forward be tougher on the border, and we will make sure that this situation never happens again. And just something along those lines. But it's just like, oh, I'm sorry that happened, but Donald Trump sucks. And oh, I'm sorry that happened, but Donald Trump killed this bill that we tried to pass 3 years later. That hasn't been passed in the Senate either. It's just in limbo. This is a talking point, especially because there is a Republican bill that they could have passed, but they didn't want to pass it in the Senate. It passed the House because they don't actually want to solve solutions. The only reason why they tried to push something through this year, I believe it was this year or into last year, but I think it was this year, is because they wanted this talking point. They wanted to look like they were doing something. That's why Biden started doing some executive orders. But I've been said that they should just reinstitute Remain in Mexico, call it something else, and pretend like it's not the same thing. Because they do that with prescription drug prices, insulin, whatever. Like, oh, Trump did what? This is our thing. What? And no tax on tips. What? That's our idea. What are you talking about? Just take the idea and pretend it's yours. That would be better, I think. I mean, lying's not good, but these answers are ridiculous. And people, oh, he's talking over her. Oh, listen to the substance of that she's actually spewing from her mouth. And somebody already said, Astina 85 said they already saw this and they don't think they can stomach it anymore. I understand. I understand if you don't want to hear her voice anymore. All this stuff is so annoying. It's so annoying. So they should have kept Remain in Mexico. These criminals and violent men and whoever have come across the border. People have come from everywhere to come into our border. And people's lives have been uprooted and destroyed. And her answer for the mistakes that they made is, yeah, but we tried something a couple months ago and Trump said no. It's got nothing to do with what you decided in the early days. I'm so glad that Bret had those clips ready. I'm so glad that he said their names. I'm so glad that he tried to hold her feet to the fire here. And it is really a shame that she's really trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the American people. She doesn't respect you. She doesn't respect you to lie to you all like this.
About that as well.
But do you want to answer
in all fairness, I told you I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
Not enough to apologize.
During that time, you said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
That's a good question.
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration, even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure I know you investigate and you are a serious journalist. They will tell you, we need more judges. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately.
Yeah, but that's another reason why you should have Remain in Mexico, because you have all these people who are having these illegitimate asylum claims that they're just allowing to come to the country. And we do have all these backlogs of people. And yeah, it'd be nice to have more judges and people to get them out if they even want to get them out, because it just appears that she wants to give them amnesty, which is, by her own admission, the first thing that she proposed, her and Biden proposed before any other kind of legislation. And by the way, he did point out that she just tried to like ignore the fact that when she got in, they had control of the House and the Senate. It was very like narrow, but they had control. That's how they passed the other stuff. And she was like the tie-breaking vote. So if and they didn't even bring it up to the floor, really. So it's just excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. It's just
ultimately is the only place that's going to get fixed, Brett.
Well,
that's how the system works.
That's the premise of this question.
But
There were
that's how the
90
system
plus
works.
executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay here because there's other things to talk about, but you frequently talk to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get
With
it.
you?
They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done. These guys down at the border, these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
Okay, so the answer was such trash. Let me see if I can. That was 5 years ago. My youngest sister was like, that's like something you say about a fashion choice. Like, oh my gosh, you wore puffy sleeves. That was the 80s, you know? You don't do that with like legislation that could impact the lives of so many Americans and stuff. So that was 5 years ago. Yes, and she wanted to be president 5 years ago. And she wasn't able to pull it off. And now she might be able to pull it off, but it's not looking good for her. So we need a greater explanation to why there's a shift. But there's not a shift. There's not a shift. She said before that her values haven't changed. And I gave her more leniency, maybe more than I should have. I mean, I knew she didn't really change her opinions, but she was saying my values haven't changed about like fracking. But I explained it or tried to interpret it for her as, you know, at least what she was trying to get over on the American people in her interview with Dana Bash, that she hasn't banned fracking. Her value is green policies, and there are other ways to go about it than going to the extreme. That's not what she said. Maybe that's what she was trying to get at her interview before. But you can't apply this logic here. With my values haven't changed. She didn't say that right here, but we know that's what she said before. My values haven't changed. She's saying that we'll follow the law. We'll follow the law. Whatever the law is, we'll follow the law. He's like, okay, but you picked Tim Walz that just signed these bills. So now it's the law. So do you support these things? We will follow the law. Okay, yeah, sure. You will follow the law after you make it the law. After you kill the filibuster in the Senate and pass a bunch of crazy stuff, after you try to pack the courts so they cannot stop your evil reign and shoot down your unconstitutional garbage, you will follow the law as you see fit. Sure. I'm pretty sure there's lots of things that you wouldn't try to follow. I mean, with the student loan situation, how many times they got shot down by the Supreme Court? But Joe Biden's out there. I defied the Supreme Court. So I don't think these people are like so gung ho about just following the law. I don't think so. I don't think so. But she's telling you that her values haven't changed. She didn't say, "Hey, I don't want to give, and all the stuff to illegals. I don't want to pay for all that stuff anymore. My views have changed." It's no, we're gonna follow the law. We're gonna follow the law. She doesn't want to follow how the laws are when it comes to reproductive rights, as they would say. It doesn't make any sense, but abortion rights. She wants to change the law. She wants to codify Roe. So she's not just gonna let things be. She has a legislative agenda. So that answer was trash. Vote accordingly. Let's keep going.
So decriminalizing border crossings, like you said in 2019.
Oh, that's a great point. That's a great point. They're not following the law when it comes to the border. Yeah, there's plenty of things that the laws on the books that they're just not following. The reason why they wanted to get that the border bill or whatever that was trying to go through the Senate passed is because it did give them a lot of money, but it gave them money to fund to groups that will help these people relocate into the country. It'll help fund border agents, but not really to stop people from coming into the country, but just, and these judges and these ICE agents and stuff, they wanted to just make it so they can usher more people into the country, not stop folks from coming all over or kick people out. That's not what she wants to do. That's not what the Democrats want to do. So they're just playing games, but they could follow the law. There's a problem. We have a problem. When we have the cartel running our border, sending all these people up here with these coyotes, we have transporting people from all over the world, so much so that these people who are being transported are scared of the people they're being transported with. We've got kids that we don't know where they are. And they were crying and so upset. She was so mad and tweeting up a storm when there were 300 kids that weren't like reunited with their families. And Trump's like, the coyotes brought them over, and the Democrats were dumb and didn't even know what that was. And it's almost like 300,000 kids, right? And they didn't mention that at her debate with Trump. JD Vance brought it up, and they just kind of slid right over that. And I'm like, can we revisit that? That's a big deal. There's all these kids, we don't know where they are. They can't account for them. This has caused so much trouble because of their incompetence. And they're playing games with you. They could just follow the law. They could just protect the border. But when Texas wants to protect their border and put up some kind of fencing or buoys or whatever, here comes the Biden-Harris administration fighting to stop them from protecting the border and enforcing the border. That's who they are.
Do not believe in decriminalizing border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president.
And this is another thing she tries to do. She's like, I have not done that as vice president, and I won't do it as president. Okay, first of all, we don't believe you. And then maybe you can't pull it off because people won't let you. Maybe. But you don't need to like flat out like change the law if you do things like, you guys remember when all the Haitians were pouring in over the border and that you had those images of like the Border Patrol agents on the horses, and they had reins or whatever for the horses, and people were like, they're whipping the migrants. Those weren't whips. They weren't using the split reins to whip the migrants, but it became a big deal, big thing. And Kamala Harris helped to push the hoax. She helped to push that, and they investigated the border agents, all this stuff. It was really stupid. But after that, they kind of used the hype of that to give, protected status to the Haitians. And now we have a lot of them in, Ohio and other places in these really small towns with very small populations that have just been overwhelmed. So those people came illegally, and now they have protective status. So she doesn't have to decriminalize, border crossings necessarily to still decriminalize them in a way. So she can play with word games or whatever. But in the past, she has said she wanted to decriminalize that kind of stuff. Her values haven't changed though, so she can still find a way around it. FYI. FYI.
So these are evolutions that you've had.
But let's be very clear. I'm the only person who's running for president who has prosecuted trans.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention, because she said, I haven't done these things as president. Well, you didn't have that direct power to do that as president, as vice president. So like, she'll also say, I haven't banned, as vice president, I haven't banned fracking. Okay, but you don't have that power to do that either as vice president. In contrast, when you were running for president in the past, you said things like, if Congress does not act, I will do X, Y, and Z with executive order. And including some of this really radical stuff, including moving on guns and so on. So yeah, you haven't done it as vice president. You haven't had that particular power. She's had some power to do some things. She's been part of like important decisions. Like she's the last one in the room when they pulled out of Afghanistan. I don't know how much Joe would have listened to her anyway, but she was the last one in the room. She was tie-breaking vote on like the Inflation Reduction Act, which was really like a Green New Deal policy or whatever, and she kind of admitted. Then Joe Biden like outright admitted, he said, I wish we would have called it what it actually is. I'm like, did Beetle just get you with the truth serum or something? Like, why are you like telling the truth about that, man? So, she didn't have the power to decriminalize border crossings as vice president, but they're still, if they're pitching amnesty, that's like the first thing that they pitch, according to her, trying to, give a pathway to citizenship to these people who came in illegally. And if they're just going to give protective status to different people who come in here, it's kind of like she's doing the same thing without having to actually change the law.
National criminal organizations, from the Sinaloa cartel to the Guadalajara cartel to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally. And I will do that. She might be playing up her record there, but I'm not positive. I take that work quite seriously.
This is a time when voters, especially here in Pennsylvania, are inundated with commercials and ads. They just want it to stop because it's every commercial. But many of them add noise, but a few of them seem to break through. This particular one from the Trump campaign has gotten a lot of attention.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery. For prisoners. For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law. And it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing, stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what, you got to take responsible for what happened in your administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in this presidency.
It's in black and white.
Would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment surgeries?
I will follow the law, just as I think Donald Trump would say he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think he spent $20 million on those ads, trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about.
Okay, before she starts going on her little rant here about Trump, which someone said that they read that she said Trump 57 times. She said a lot. She said it a lot. That clip that they showed that was in the ad, because I'm putting together a video, so I just watched that like an hour or so ago. She said that there was apparently a law in place or whatever where she was making sure that someone, an inmate, was getting reassignment surgery or whatever. But she also said that she helped to change the policy in California to help or whatever to make sure that these people can get those kind of things. And I don't know what was the real significance of what she actually did. She might have been playing it up for the audience. But she said what she said. So she obviously supports it. And so, as Bret said, you will have a say in what actually happens here. You're going to have a say. And so she's just, I'm going to follow the law. Yeah, the laws that you like, and you'll implement what you want done. It's your agenda. You're driving it as the president. And there's things she supported as a senator, and before that, before she became the senator of California. So we can't just forget that. She wants you to forget it, though. Now, it's funny that they talked this much about that ad, because we talked about it yesterday, and I broke it down how they must have had a different ad that they played during football. And Charlemagne said he was watching football from the Breakfast Club, Charlemagne, and he said on his show, like, oh my gosh, like she's funding taxpayer surgeries for trans people. I don't want my taxpayer dollars going that for inmates and sex changes and stuff. And so since then, Trump has taken that clip. Not Trump, but his people have taken that clip of Charlemagne talking about it and remixed, I guess, the same commercial, because now Charlemagne is on that. But Charlemagne said that's a pretty effective ad. But that particular ad, they kept it was geared toward men, obviously, but I think specifically toward African American men. And I broke that down a bit yesterday, so I won't go more into it really than that. But that ad is effective, and that's why she's trying to say, well, Donald Trump basically did the same thing. No. No, I don't remember him ever like getting up and rah-rahing for that. And I'm sure, and there's lots of things that might be going on without your knowledge, maybe, as president, but it's something that we don't expect him to be like, oh yeah, that's totally an awesome thing to do, And by the way, we've talked about this before, but Biden, one of the judges that he wanted to appoint, and went through the a Senate confirmation hearing, made sure to get a sex change for a serial child rapist. So the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, is fixated on this, and we're just not going to forget, because it's inconvenient for you because it's election time. Democrats should not have allowed her to go this far. JD Vance said after this interview, he's like, hey, Democrats, you can always replace Kamala Harris with Joe Biden.
Focusing on the needs of the American people. Whereas at $20 million on that ad, on an issue that, as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people, it's really quite remote. And again,
you don't want
this
our taxpayer dollars
no
fund it.
Look at where we are, though.
Shows where your values are.
Plans for the American people. I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy. I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need. My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy, his would make them weaker, would ignite inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as president of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that.
Okay, so problem there for her, that sounded so elitist. Like he's like, okay, why do you think so many people trust him? Like you can look at polling. People prefer or trust him with the economy more than her. Okay. And there's easy answers for that. He's already been the president. People had good experiences during that time of the economy with the tax cuts and whatever. You know, he's run a business. There's reasons why people trust him more than they trust her. Who has no private sector experience except maybe working at McDonald's, but I don't think that's true. You know, so there's reasons why people would trust him. And she doesn't have to go to, well, the people who've studied this, the experts who've looked at my plan, they like it. So in other words, the voters are wrong. You're wrong. We are correct. Okay? The people who know what they're talking about, we like it. Goldman Sachs likes me. BlackRock. Vanguard. Nancy Pelosi. Come on. You don't alert the American people that they're wrong or crazy or something like that, or just dumb. You know, and maybe she's not using terms like, oh, they're stupid, but y'all don't know what y'all talking about. Other people, the people who know better than y'all. That wasn't a good way to answer that question. So, by the way, I like Craig's comment here about Trump's money on the ad. He said money well spent. That, you know, it's an effect. What matters is it an effective ad? I mean, she spends money well, I guess it was still the Biden campaign at the time, but they were spending money about Trump and Central Park 5 and all that stuff, you know, attacking his character, whatever. So if alleging that Trump is racist and so on. So he can very easily point out the fact that you support transgender sex surgeries for illegals or whatever, because that speaks to what your priorities are and how radical you are and how irresponsible. You're just not a good steward of other people's money. Like, people understand that you have to spend billions upon billions on the military and other things like that, and some people don't like that, but you know, it's just a fact of life. You have to spend a lot of money for social you know, programs, though we should do something about that because we just don't have money. But you know, nobody wants to touch it. She doesn't want to touch it. Trump doesn't want to touch it, et cetera, et cetera. Like, people understand money is going to different places. But when they hear something stupid like that, they're like, wait a second. Wait a second right now. That's crazy. So yeah, it's an effective ad. And that's why he spent the money. And she's complaining about it because it worked.
His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I know.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say, with, you know, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes in to office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite
ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small
long as you
businesses,
haven't been late on
extending
your
the
rent for
tax
2
deduction
years.
from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we've been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been.
Let me pause. She goes on to an attack here. New way forward. We're not going to say mean things anymore. Okay, she had said in the previous like question or whatever that she's obviously not Joe Biden, she's not Trump or whatever. It's not going to be a continuation of of Biden's presidency, and her answer is basically, well, I'm a different person with different life experiences, so we won't have the same result. Okay, but there's a problem here though, because on The View, when they said, was there anything you would have done differently? Her answer was what? Nothing comes to mind. Now, I know she won't be the same as Joe Biden because she's more radical than Joe Biden. Biden is, he'll go where he thinks he needs to go. And he's insincere as well, but he has other values that have been compromised largely, but I think in his heart he's not as crazy and far left as she is. But she is was the most liberal senator, even left of Bernie Sanders. That's who she is, and that hasn't changed. It doesn't matter. That was 5 years ago. She hasn't changed, and she hasn't given you an explanation why she's changed, and she hasn't really told you that she's not for a lot of the stuff anymore. She said, I'll follow the law. So if nothing comes to mind about things that she would have done differently than Joe Biden, does that mean she would have still got rid of Remain in Mexico and rescinded a lot of these executive orders that Trump did that led to the death of Laken Riley and these other people? Nothing comes to mind. The exit from Afghanistan, you would have did things the same way. You would have droned that aid worker and those kids on your exit out too and held no one accountable. Nothing comes to mind. Nothing comes to mind, Kamala. Or Kamala. Whatever. Nothing comes to mind. So if nothing comes to mind and there's no accountability here, you're not saying, oh, gosh, we made some mistakes. And I know nobody wants to say that, but here's a problem. You're the incumbent and people want change. And you're not the change candidate when you don't recognize and acknowledge that there were mistakes made and you will correct them. Because you're going to keep the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again. She apparently doesn't know where the mistakes were made. She just knows things were bad right now. But if she can't say what she would do differently with the beauty of hindsight, she can just do the same thing and keep driving straight off that cliff. So that's the problem. So I don't think she'll be a continuation of Joe Biden. I think she will be worse because her ideas are frankly stupid. Like some of the economic stuff, I could point to interviews and other economic people talking about how stupid her price gouging jargon is and how stupid some of her policies are with the housing, how she's just going to make it more expensive by offering $25,000, which, by the way, if you've been late on your rent for 2 years, then you're not going to qualify anyway. There's these things, these qualifiers that you might not meet. she does stuff like say, I'm announcing a plan for Black Americans, Black men, yay. And it says, okay, we'll give you these loans and others, because she knows that she can't just promise Black men something because that's unconstitutional. So it's for everybody, but she's just going to market it specifically to Black men because she thinks you're stupid. Because her team is stupid. They're like, let's bribe him with weed. Anyway, we talked about the other day. But she is actually radical. And the things that they're proposing, like Joe Biden knew at first that some of the things that they were saying was nuts. Like at first when he was running for president, he wanted something like the Hyde Amendment that bans like federal funding from funding abortion. He didn't want that to go away because he's Catholic. And then he changed his mind after there were angry rants on Twitter or something. And he was being pressed. So he moved to the left. If he had just been like, I don't know, the moderate, like the common sense guy, let's return back to normal that they were kind of promising, you know, maybe that he even with his decline, they probably still would have just kept him in the race. And I don't know, Jill would have been president in the next 4 years behind the scenes or whatever. But again, Kamala, he moved to the left to appease his crazy leftist base. But Kamala is that crazy leftist base. And she's trying to run to the right to get to the center so people don't think that she's nutty and independents will cross over her. And that, you know, Republicans who don't want to vote for Trump will stay home, you know, and Democrats won't cross over and she can still keep men or whatever. But this interview didn't alleviate people's fears. I know her fans or whatever are out there doing their best to make it seem like she did a good job. But the sort of cope and cover that they're running for her is exactly the kind of cope and cover that they would have been running for Joe Biden after his debate, in which some people still did run for him. But if they didn't have a way to replace him, they would have just pretended like his debate was awesome if they didn't have another option. But they did, and they decided to act on it. But prior to that debate, they were lying their butts off about how sharp he was. Joe Scarborough, I think that's how you say his last name, kind of. I don't know. Morning Joe. He was like, this is the sharpest Biden has ever been. And it wasn't true. But they lied, and they're lying for her. The substance of this interview, and there's her kind of demeanor and other stuff as well, but the substance of this interview just isn't there. If you're paying attention, if you're not smart, maybe you're convinced by this all.
Designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Madam
That
Vice
is
President, more than
turning the
70% of people
That is
tell
about turning the
pollsters-
page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than
People are
70% of people
exhausted.
tell the country is on the wrong track.
Okay, so before they get to this point, it's funny that she's like, we need to turn the page on the rhetoric, and there's a Kamala Harris fan in here talking about Trump's going to kick me to the curb and that I'm standing for white supremacy. Just rhetoric, just crazy. You're working with a white supremacy. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have done so much to damage the country and divide. It's insane. For example, when they talk about the very fine people hoax and try to make it seem like Trump called neo-Nazis very fine people, that's something that's easily debunkable. I mean, you can just go to the source of the claim that they made. And in that same source where Trump was talking about very fine people on both sides, he specifically said, I'm not talking about neo-Nazis, though. I condemn them totally. And they want to make it seem like Trump was uplifting neo-Nazis. And Joe Biden kept up with a lie. And Kamala Harris continues with the lie. And that's a particular lie that is very destructive, not only to Trump, not only to people who are going to vote for Trump, but to the nation as a whole. It's done deep psychological damage, and it's a lie. So when she wants to talk about rhetoric, why I don't like her, why she's my least favorite Democrat in 2020 when they all ran, is because she is one of the most insincere people to try for the office. The way that they lie is insane. Now Biden is a extraordinary liar. Extraordinary as a boldness of the lies that he will tell. I don't think he's particularly skilled at it, but she's worse. She is worse. The continuous rhetoric with like the Central Park Five, making it seem like because he thought that they were guilty, when they confessed, by the way, it makes him racist. Go read the actual ad that he put out. I mentioned this yesterday, but I have an article on my website where I literally just wrote out the ad so people could read it and what he said. And there were like 30 kids attacking people that night, and they were attacking homeless people. They attacked and hospitalized a teacher and Marine. And of course, there was the jogger who was left for dead in a ravine after being, sexually assaulted. And she was in a coma for, I think, 11 days. And they rounded up kids, and the kids started snitching on each other. And that's how they gather their evidence. Just, good old fashioned police work, hitting the ground or whatever. So after that, I think it was maybe about 2 weeks after that, Trump put out an ad basically saying that we should not be afraid to go walk to the park. And criminals do crazy stuff because they don't fear retribution. And that was it. It's a lot of similar stuff that he says today. I bet if you go read it, you'd probably agree with a lot of stuff that he's saying. Now, a lot of people fundamentally disagree with the death penalty in general, but FYI, the reason why the Central Park Five were convicted of acting in concert with the sexual assault is because they all confessed to touching her, not all like penetrating her, but they're like, oh yeah, I grabbed her boob or I held her down, stuff like that. There were other kids who were implicated by other kids, but it did not come out of their mouth that they were the ones who participated in it. So those are the facts. And you can believe that they're innocent or guilty all you want, but it doesn't make Trump racist because he believed that they were guilty, especially after they confessed. But they make it some kind of stain on his character. You can go read the confession for yourself. But they're the ones who push this crazy rhetoric. But if you want to talk about racism, Kamala Harris's plan for Black Americans is racist. It's racist. Oh, we're going to lower. I talked to you guys about the bullet points she put out. We didn't go to the website and read all the stuff together. But it's like, okay, they need jobs and government jobs. We're going to lower the standards. That's good for Black men. Yeah, lower the standards. They're more likely to get jobs. Oh, criminal records. Man, it's so hard when people have criminal records. So we're going to make it so that the employers have to look more at their qualifications rather than what they possibly did while they were in the clinker. Yeah, that'll help Black men. How about just, if you think it'll help people in general, just do the thing to help people in general, but trying to tailor it to Black men specifically because they're criminals and they're poorly educated and apparently they like pot, that's what's actually racist. And of course, she's really into abortion, which disproportionately kills Black children. So you can be mad at me for not liking Kamala Harris and standing by Kamala Harris. But as I've been seeing a lot of Black men point out online, if Kamala Harris can pick a white husband, why can't people pick a white president? So, and there's nothing wrong with people marrying white people. That's not the point I'm trying to make. But the point is that people try to make it everything about race while people don't even live by, some kind of black supremacy sort of thing. So just stop. People support who they want to support based on policies, and people, I don't like her. I don't like her. I don't like her for many reasons that I've ragged about. I've ragged about things about Trump for more than a year, pretty nonstop, but I don't like her. And she would do irreparable damage to the country. And she's not worthy of this moment. I think it would be awful if she's able to slide in with this 4-month campaign. And I think it's likely that they will try this sort of garbage again if she can get away with it. So what I just said right there has nothing to do with Trump. But she's not good at this. It doesn't make sense to try to malign people's character because they have strong opinions about an individual. I judge her by the content of her character and merit. I know she's into DEI, but the content of her character is poor. The quality of her work is atrocious. It doesn't matter what color her skin is. It doesn't matter that she has a vajayjay. She just sucks, okay? Get over it.
They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
But you're
people
the
have
lever of
become,
power.
but listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him
Madam
instead
Vice
of
President,
the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
It's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk.
Okay, well, she's getting the most cakewalk election ever because, again, she's only had to run for like a couple months now and didn't get selected by the delegates. They didn't have a floor fight, They pushed Joe out, probably threatened him with the 25th Amendment. So if you're saying it's not supposed to be easy, I'm not saying it's a cakewalk for her, but she did hide and not do interviews for a long time. I'm sure she's only doing this one because she's down in the polls. So I think she thinks it's supposed to be a little bit easy, so I definitely think she's entitled. But the question presented to her, country's on the wrong track. All these people say it's on the wrong track. And she starts saying that, well, Donald Trump has been running for all this time. And people think that she did a good job with this interview. What does him running for office have to do with the fact that she's the vice president, Joe Biden is the president, and it's their administration? And people will push back and they're saying things like, oh, well, he's still influential. He is very influential. And frankly, it's just kind of worked to empower more Democrats, honestly. Because he's chosen he backed some bad candidates in the midterms, and there's some MAGA folks that took over like different state parties who weren't actually good at raising money and doing other things that state parties are supposed to do. So if anything, Trump the influence is good for him, but not everybody has kind of reaped the benefits from his decisions and his influence and stuff. So if anything, it's just worked to help empower more Democrats, and they didn't have that red wave that they were expecting. So again, the Democrats are in charge. Kamala is the vice president. Joe Biden is the president. So the country's on the wrong track. Yeah, Trump's been running, but what does it have to do with the bills that you sign and the legislation that you set? And then she just goes off about how he has all these people that have said things about him, and then she complains about how Trump makes it personal grievances and et cetera, blah blah blah, and rhetoric and so on, and how he demeans people when she's using things that people have said to demean him and so on. So and I don't think she said it yet, but she brings up the losers and suckers thing too, which isn't true. I debunked that many times on you can go read the article I wrote about it on my website about the losers and suckers story. I debunked it when it originally came out, but I did another update of that story so that update will be easier to find. But I also did a video. If you haven't seen it, I have a 10 Trump hoaxes debunked or whatever video on YouTube. Go ahead and check that out. I put them in order, the most damaging to him. And losers and suckers story is also debunked in there. So there's some really good info in there if you haven't seen that. But it was such a stupid answer. I'm sorry. It was really dumb. It was really dumb.
And misguided, the 50%? Are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald
Just
Trump, if
kids,
you watch
right?
any of his rallies,
Teenagers.
he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former
I don't even
president
know what she's
today.
talking
Harris
about.
Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what.
Again, I'm not sure exactly what she's talking about. I'm sure it's probably taken out of context, like how they take the dictator comment out of context, how they take the bloodbath comment out of context, which again is stuff that's very damaging to our country. And she feeds into that rhetoric, knowing that the dictator thing was a joke about being dictator on day one, but he just meant that he was going to put out a bunch of executive orders. Someone tried to prove that Trump was a fascist because he said that, but yeah, I'm like, your best evidence of Trump being a fascist is a joke. Okay. Or the bloodbath comment when he was talking about how the auto industry is going to suffer if Joe Biden gets reelected. They're like, him and his supporters are going to kill people if he doesn't win. Just stupid stuff. But what the heck was that right there? Like, Brett, with all due respect, that is not what he's been saying. Okay, but Brett said, I'm going to show you this clip of what we asked Trump about it today. Why not respond to the clip? Why not respond to what Trump said? And now she's trying to make it seem like Brett and Fox News are doing something deceptive. It's
what you just showed.
He was asked about that
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line.
What are you talking
about? He has repeated it many times.
He just specifically said, here's a clip of, we asked him about that. Harris Faulkner asked about that. And here's the clip. And just, without due respect, he told you what he's going to show you. She should have said, okay, cool. Can your team please show the clip of Donald Trump saying that about the original clip? Why not say that instead of going down this path? You just look ridiculous. But this is one part where people are like, slay queen, yes, call them out, yes. She's moronic, guys.
And you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy.
It's a democracy. It's not actually a democracy, but I just want to remind people, and it upsets me that no one has like brought this up to her. But you know, when she was in California, she went after David Daleiden, who exposed Planned Parenthood for selling baby body parts. And instead of going after Planned Parenthood, she went after him. You know, and there's some pro-life people who have been convicted, and people who have been indicted. It's some of the people, their trials were very short because what they tried to get him with was really stupid. But there's mothers who just wanted to defend life right now who are going to jail. And there's people who tried to bomb or did firebomb like pregnancy crisis centers and stuff who they didn't really pursue, who get away with pretty bad stuff. It does seem like they weaponize the Justice Department on who they want to go after as far as political opponents. So I would be very concerned about Kamala Harris having total kind of levers of power there. Remember when the National School Board Association conspired with the White House to make a letter to suggest to the DOJ that they needed to use the Patriot Act on parents who are going to these school board meetings. And one of the examples that they used to justify that was an article about a father in, I think it was Loudoun County, Virginia, and his daughter he went to an event that night where they were, there's a lot of parents upset at the school board and stuff, but his daughter was sexually assaulted by a boy in a skirt in the bathroom, and he wanted to know what was up, and they were lying about stuff that happened. So he got upset and he ended up getting carried away. And people, at first when the story came out, they were like mocking him because his shirt was up and his belly was all out and stuff. He didn't look very flattering in the photos, but that was a reference that they used in that letter to justify using, again, the Patriot Act against parents. So to the credit of the school board, National School Board Association, I think it was only like 2 people in power who came together to conspire about that letter. And there were other people who were very upset about it and said that they would not have signed on to it. So I don't want to make it seem like it was everybody in the National School Board Association or whatever, but that was something that they coordinated together with the White House on to get a letter so Merrick Garland could do investigations and other things like that. So I don't want people to just pretend that they are not above going after political opponents and stuff. And these are people who, they push they're like, oh, we have to tackle, misinformation, and they work to pressure social media companies to get them banned or suppressed on etc., when they're the ones who try to set who is giving misinformation and so on. So it's funny that she's pointing to Trump as if he's some kind of threat when Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, they're the ones who instituted unconstitutional OSHA mandates to try to coerce people into taking the jab, and people did lose their job. People were in threat of losing their job. They push for lockdowns and other things like that. So as far as who is dangerous wielding power, again, we've experienced them and we've experienced Trump. And I'm more concerned about her. I just am.
And in a democracy, the president of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
I don't know what she's talking about.
And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump. You call Donald Trump.
Mark Milley also tipped off China because there's some kind of policy that he didn't want Trump to do. So he tipped off China, was trying to protect China. I don't remember the specific details, and I can't Google them right now. I don't know where my phone is. I would look it up, but I just wanted to put it out there that Mark Milley is a little shady.
He's misguided. You say now
He's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions.
Like, I know she's just trying to give her like answer that's not great. But it's kind of funny when you think about it. It's kind of like if she was clever enough, this would be a good diss. I don't think she's clever enough to mean it this way, but Joe Biden has the capacity to do what he has done. It's essentially what she's saying. It's like, it's true. And then explains some things. It explains why things are not great because he's not firing all the way that he ought to be. Yeah. So yeah, I think if his record is supposed to be the evidence of his mental capability, I guess we have our answer about his state of decline. Okay. And whether he's mentally fit to lead the country. I guess we have our answer. But I don't think she was clever enough to mean that as a subtle dig against Joe. I just thought it was funny. But Joe, she covered for him. When Bill Hur, no, I'm sorry, Robert Hur. Well, I guess it would have been Bill if his name's Robert, but Robert Hur. No, it's Bob. Bob is short for... Anyway, Bill is like William for some reason, but I think it's Robert Hur. When he investigated Joe Biden, he said that his memory was poor, but essentially he did the crime, but the jury would feel too bad about convicting him of keeping the classified documents, and he has to be, even though there's evidence that he willfully retained them in knowing that he had them or whatever, they're just gonna feel bad for him, and it's not worth prosecuting him. And Kamala Harris was like, that was so unprofessional and what he said was so wrong, blah blah blah, and she keeps saying he was running circles around people, and everyone else who's had us watching from the outside, just seeing him basically on screen, we knew something was up. They tried to say it was cheap fakes and we were all crazy, but we knew something was up. And people who saw him at that fundraiser, like George Clooney and other folks, saw him and knew things were up. And then after they wanted to get rid of him, leaks started coming out. And I'm sure there were leaks from her people, even though she's still saving face in these interviews because she has to make it seem like, she's for her boss. But this was an extreme scandal. It's a scandal that he's still president. Anyway, but she covered for him. So if she would lie about that, something this extreme, what can you trust her about? What can you trust her about? So she has to pretend like he was sharp because she can't. This is a big lie. It's a whopper. But whatever.
On behalf of the American people,
There were no concerns raised.
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And
but,
Donald Trump
But
is,
you talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the
By the way, he's not on the debate stage. He's running the country. He's not on the ballot, true, to run again, but he's running the country. So if there's something wrong with him, it's important that you invoke the 25th Amendment. And I don't want you to be president. Oh my gosh, I don't. But this is a big deal. And I think the only reason why he's probably still president is because they probably threatened him with the 25th Amendment and they kind of wanted to go out with as much dignity as possible. And he probably still doesn't appreciate what happened to him. And I'm sure Jill doesn't appreciate what's happened to him. And that's why they've done subtle things to kind of to undermine her candidacy. Because he's still probably ticked off about it.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best,
Dodge,
including leaders of our national security, community have all spoken out, even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So
that's probably the best point she's made the entire interview about Pence. Like the job was open for Vance to take because his running mate. I probably would have got more specific with that because it's really because Mike Pence wouldn't go along with the overturning of the election and the stuff that they wanted. So she that's a point that still stings, but it's like surrounded by all this other garbage in the interview that I don't know how many people are gonna care about that. But there are people who said that Donald Trump is unfit to serve and they don't want to vote for him and they didn't support him in the primary, who are going to support him over Joe Biden. I mean, sorry, they were going to support him over Joe Biden, but they're going to support him over Kamala Harris because they still fear the repercussions of her presidency over Donald Trump. Because even though that they know he's bad, they know. So all the stuff she's saying, he's the worst. He's blah blah blah. But even still, she's worse. What we've experienced now is worse. What they will do and will continue is worse than what we've already been through. So they may be annoyed with Trump. They may think he's disgusting or gross or immoral and stupid, whatever they may think about Trump. But with that firsthand experience, you still have people like Bill Barr who thought, the stuff we did with the election was crazy. Still thinks that she's the bigger threat. Still thinks that Joe Biden was a bigger threat. Now there are people who was in his administration, like Mike Pence isn't joining the campaign trail to stomp for her. He just doesn't want to endorse Trump. And he might leave it blank or he might just vote for him and not tell anybody. Just because you don't want to endorse somebody and tell other people you should do something doesn't mean that deep down they won't do something themselves. Voting for somebody and then going out and endorsing someone, I think those are two kind of different things, especially when you're a public figure. But he's not hitting the road for her. And I would not respect Mike Pence if he did. These people who say they're Republican and they're going out stomping for her, I don't respect them. Because it doesn't make sense. You can argue leaving your ballot blank or writing in somebody else, but going out and campaigning for her? What conservative values can you possibly believe in if you're going to go campaign for her? Like I mentioned, Dick Cheney, I'm like, what can they have in common besides war? What can they possibly have in common besides that? Because if you're concerned about Trump's competency, hers is totally not there. And then she's just not ready for this moment. She's been the vice president for 4 years. And she's still not good at interviews and all this stuff. And she's wanted this for a while. It's her life's goal. And she's still not good. And she has bad ideas. It's true she's not Trump. But surely there's got to be something else. Some other reason to vote for her. And if you called yourself a conservative at any point in time, or even just a Republican at any point in time, why would you support her? You can make the argument that you are concerned about the state of where the Republican Party will go because Trump has moved too far to the left. But the people who would support her aren't probably hardcore conservative anyway and don't share those concerns that I have, frankly. So it doesn't make any sense. But some people, they go down a path and then, they get praise and they get acolytes and then they start getting money and they just amass a different following and they can't be honest anymore. Now, maybe they transform their entire ideology or maybe they're doing it because they're grifting. Who knows? But I don't understand any of these people supporting her. What do they share that they possibly believe in?
Is a fact. That is a fact.
Madam Vice President, two more things. You were asked on 60 Minutes about the biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces. This is what you said.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
A number of experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran is the number one threat?
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, and then several hours on each occasion that Iran posed a threat to Israel, I was there. Most recently in the Situation Room,
You're there
in the most
doing what?
recent attack, working with the heads of our military and doing what America must always do to defend and to support Israel in its requirement to defend itself, and to give American support to be able to allow Israel to have the...
He's looking off in the distance because he said they're like flagging him down. Like there's 4 people like, we gotta cut it off. We gotta cut it off. so knowing that that information and going back and watching his eyes like look off screen is just funny. But yeah, you were there? What, Kamala, sorry. The Biden administration is like ceasefire, de-escalation. Israel is out there kicking butt right now. I don't know if it was 100% confirmed, but they were making, I saw reports that they had DNA or whatever, that they had got the head of Hamas and he was taken out. I'm not, that was kind of like breaking news when I looked at it. So I'm not positive if everything is ID'd on that, but they decimated Hamas. They went after Hezbollah and all those folks and they're just killing it. Like literally, figuratively, they're killing it. And the Biden administration has threatened to withhold aid if they went into Rafah. And she was like, I've seen the maps. And they want ceasefire. They wanted a ceasefire with an enemy that said, we will kill you when we get the chance again. They've condemned them. There are times when they want to, they've played both sides, do a lot of whataboutism and stuff, and they've spilled too much tea about Israel on the world stage when they're trying to plan and do stuff, and then when Israel keeps things close to the chest and they're all mad. So you were there and you're talking about, oh, Israel has a right to defend us. That's something you're saying on Fox and playing to an audience. But I think these people are smart enough to know. And maybe there's a lot of people who just tuned in as well, who don't normally watch Fox and maybe don't know all the details. But they've been slowing the progress and been a very frustrating partner for Israel and all this. So saying I'm there and I know how much of a threat they are, just stop. But Bret's he's bringing up the fact that their failure to really enact sanctions got them a lot of money that helped them fund all this terror.
Resources to defend itself against attack, including from Iran and Iran's terrorist proxies in the region.
Right.
And that is, and my commitment to that is unyielding and unwavering.
Critics just say that you either relaxed or failed to enforce sanctions on Iran, allowing all of this money to flow into Iran, like billions.
Let's go back to Donald
profits.
Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put
But here are
Iran in check.
the
And
estimates
Iran
in
deal is
it was
bad.
during Donald Trump's
that go
administration
towards the
that
Iran regime.
that we had an American military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches, not to mention
Madam
how
Vice
Donald
President,
Trump has
all of this money
has treated
that
and
has
talked about
gone in the
America's
past few
military
years,
and military service people,
critics
calling them
say that it goes to
suckers and
Hezbollah,
losers,
Hamas,
has diminished
and
the
Houthis. We're talking
significance.
over
There
each
we
other. I
go.
Well,
apologize.
I
you're not.
wish, I would like that we would have a conversation that is grounded in full assessment of the facts, which includes, I think this interview is supposed to be about the choices that your viewers should be presented about this election, and the contrast is important.
Yes,
The contrast is important, but if they say like, hey, what would you say to your critics where you got all this, they got all this money because you guys relax on this, and you're just like, well, but Donald Trump didn't kill the nuclear Iran deal. Yeah, that was, set up by like and pushed by like Obama and stuff, and Obama had what was it, Ben Rhodes, who was in his White House, who they said he was so anti-Israel, they called his nickname was Hamas. Like Obama had some wild people that were pushing that stuff, trying to protect that stuff. And if I was the leader of the United States of America, and Pierre, who's running against Trudeau in Canada, he was like, if Israel wants to take out Iran's nuclear facilities, that's amazing, that's great, they should do the world a favor. And that would be my attitude. Like, oh, you guys gonna do that? Wink, wink. Like, that would be great. That would be great. Because we don't want theocratic psychopaths to have nukes. And if Israel wanted to take him off the map and destroy that stuff, that'd be great. I was hoping that Israel was going to just to get rid of that stuff when they had attacked them before, when they sent all those rockets and they didn't hit anything. So but they're always like de-escalation, de-escalation, de-escalation. It's always back to Trump. It's always back to Trump with her in this interview, and it's not good. And Bret will. I'll let Bret speak before I explain why it's not good that she kept pointing back to Trump.
ma'am.
And on the subject of Iran, I am offering what should be an important contrast that is presented for folks to make a
And there
decision
are
that
critics
they
who
feel.
look at what the administration did and say and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard here. I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things
There's more to say. I have
there
much more to
are
say,
a lot of things that people want to learn about you and your policies, and
Yes.
that's why we
I
invited
invite
you
everyone to go to kamalaharris.com, and you will see that I have 80 pages of policies that are quite comprehensive and should be accessible to anyone who would like to read them. And it includes what I intend to do about affordable housing, what I intend to do about small businesses, what I do.
And that's why
intend
we
to do to
invited you
strengthen our
here
economy,
to see where you were in 2019 and where you are
support
now.
America's military and ensure we have the most lethal and best fighting force in the world.
Madam Vice President,
And
they're giving me a hard rap
Well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
I thank you for the time.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that is it. I told my sister I'm going to just watch the interview today, and she's like, "Oh, so the show's going to be 2 hours?" So, I guess it'll be 2 hours. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and being here and commenting. And I know some of you probably already saw these clips. So, kudos on you for being able to stomach this all again. But as he said, I hope you got to say everything that you wanted about Donald Trump. But the people, they've already made up their mind about Trump. What else is there to know about his character, things that we've experienced his presidency? There's, you love him, you hate him, or it's whatever. People are looking to her to see if people don't have their mind made up at this point. They're probably sitting on the fence wondering, gosh, is he really going to be is she really going to be better? Or is it good for me just to kind of sit this out? Can I cross over and vote for her? Should I go with the devil I know instead of doing this new thing and taking a risk with her? And she was like, Trump, 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 Trump. You did this thing with Iran. Okay, yeah, but Trump called somebody losers and suckers. What does that have to do with anything? What does that got to do with anything? It's not even true. It's not even true. But what does it have to do with Iran and the question at hand? Nothing. Nothing. You need more than Orange Man is bad. You need more than Orange Man is bad. When he asks a question and says, hey, do you guys regret not remain in Mexico and getting rid of all these things with executive orders? Because there's a lot of bad men who's come to the country and there's dead people because of it now. She's like, well, Trump tried to kill our bill like a months ago. What does that got to do with the decisions you made when y'all first got in? Trump, 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 Trump. People need to know if they can trust you, and you're not giving them a reason. There's no accountability. She said in this interview, it was very quick. I missed it kind of the first time I was watching it, but people pointed it out. And I did hear it I didn't stop it when she said it, but she said, well, he's got to, he's accountable for things that he does in his administration. Okay. New soundbite activated against Kamala Harris. Because you have to take accountability for the things that you did in your administration, things that you supported, things that you pushed, etc. You got to take accountability, but there's no accountability here. It would be so much better for her to just acknowledge, again, with the gift of hindsight, that there were some mistakes were made. But she's in a kind of a sticky situation because she kind of has to. Joe Biden won't let her separate himself, and they're like, "Oh, we're singing from the same song sheet. She's been involved in these important decisions, etc." And I think it's hilarious because I think for the most part, it's really not true. I mean, the Afghanistan, they said she's the last one in the room. Fine, okay. She did break the tie on some legislation, but mostly from different reports. She's had staff overturn. She's had to have like 3 different like relaunches. They barely trot her out for interviews or anything like that. They'll send her to an abortion clinic, or they'll send her out for something when they want to talk about abortion or something like that. But for the most part, they were really trying to ignore Kamala. She's very bad at her job. People were mostly ignoring her. I don't think they have a copacetic relationship. I would assume Jill and Joe probably never got over her insinuating that he was a racist, trying to keep her from integrating in schools, and that their relationship is one of convenience and not one of deep respect. And she stabbed him in the back. So I think secretly he certainly wouldn't mind if she didn't win. And I think that he probably would like it if she lost, because Joe Biden at the end of the day is a very petty old man. And he's been undermining her. He's done things to undermine her. So it's really hard for her to separate herself from Joe, but she hasn't like totally thrown him under the bus, besides like the whole little kind of like, forcing him to the side. But she needs to be more forceful, more specific about how she would deviate from him. Because again, if nothing comes to mind about things that you would change, mistakes that were made, you don't acknowledge them, no one can believe that you're going to be any better. And the question is, do we want to continue down this path, continue driving off this cliff, or are we going to hit reverse and go back to where we were? Because at least that was more comfortable than this. You might not like Trump, but at least your pockets were fatter. So people again are looking for a reason to trust her, put some faith in her, or at least stay home if they don't like Trump. Like, feel justified in not writing his name, like checking him off at the ballot box, staying disengaged. I saw so many people. I saw different independents that were like, this is moving me toward the Trump column. I don't want to vote for him, but man. And I did see some people claim that they can't vote for her after seeing that interview. I don't know how many people on Twitter are being, genuine about that, or those are bots or just people saying stuff. I don't know. But there are some real people that I saw on, like X and other sites that were like, I don't feel like I really can sit this one out. Christians and other people who said, I don't feel like I can sit this out because she's so bad. There might be plenty of people who respect the fact that she showed up. And I think she did out of desperation, not because she's brave. Not because she respects the press, not because she respects the viewers of Fox News. I think it was desperation. And they were talking about going on Joe Rogan. I don't know if that's going to happen after this, because Joe Rogan that's like a 3-hour experience. I don't know if they would alter it for her sake, but I don't see her doing too well on that. That would be a big risk. Maybe it's a big enough risk for her. Maybe the situation is so dire that she needs to take that risk. I don't know. But it's out of desperation, not because she's brave, because she avoided the press for all that time. And they justified it. And I don't, second time around really watching this, I don't think Bret they were talking over each other, sure. But he wanted her to answer the questions. And she's up there trying to filibuster and go on and on and on about things that are off track. And he's trying to interject and correct her on certain things or add important context. She's like, we need to look at the whole context of stuff. When in the beginning, she's making up stories about how she tried to fix the immigration system by amnesty. But you don't want to even say the name of the bill. You don't want to mention that they didn't bring it up and you had control of the House and the Senate. And now when you bring up Iran and you want to trash Donald Trump, you're like, well, we got to look at the whole context. Okay. Whatever. Did you guys love the interview? Did you guys love the interview? Someone said, why doesn't she answer questions? They're hard for her to answer because she doesn't want to take accountability. People would respect her if she was a little more vulnerable and just, let it be known that mistakes were made and she's going to, make some corrections. Like, I've learned a lot from Joe Biden, but there are some things just kind of break from him. But that doesn't really, when you have to kind of cut down the person who's, the president of your party, that really doesn't bode well. I think they'd probably be in, I don't know. I wonder if the polls there was a disaster after the debate with Joe Biden, but maybe things would have leveled back out. So there wasn't like, maybe they'd be close to what they are now. By getting rid of Joe Biden, one of their pillars of being an incumbent, which is an indicator of being likely to win, was gone. So maybe they shot themselves in the foot by replacing him, but they certainly shouldn't have replaced him with her. But they kind of had to do it because you can't just put a woman of color to the side with their ideology. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. That's all I got to say. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream, run my website, all that good stuff. So you guys can support. I do very much appreciate it. Thank you for you guys for watching live and for commenting. You guys can also check out different merch that's available on the store. You guys, so my black tea mug here, and I got different teas, like I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For shirt and other stuff. You guys can also check out some of my books that I've written. I got some posters in my background and some books over here on the side. But again, I have 18 that I've written all together. 2 are nonfiction. Like, one of my nonfiction books is Slay Your Fear: How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. And in my other nonfiction book would be, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion, which covers, theology, obviously, but always also rights and science and philosophy, all kinds of good stuff. And I saw somebody doing a live saying that they were Christian and pro-choice today, and I didn't have the time to join in and go in on them. But there's nothing about your walk as a Christian that should correlate with being pro-choice at all. Not when we're talking about the choice is to destroy an image bearer of God. So, but I have fictional books. I have children's chapter books as well, and I have young adult books. I don't write anything too spicy or anything like that, but got some good stories that I recommend you guys check out. Again, you guys can look in the description. There's a take you to my Amazon page, and that's the easiest way to find my content and get some books. Actually, my youngest sister, she did pop on this live in the chat. Tina, she was working on she was doing a live working about doing some illustrations for my book. So I don't know if Tina's still on, but thank you, Tina, for doing that. And I look forward to when it's finished for you guys to be able to see. This is a really cute story. It's a really cute story. So thank you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.